Are we doing an intro or anything like that?
Uh, This is the Disgruntled Crab and Rusty Culture most professional review show! We're just going to have a discussion and review Isom now that it's finally out and kind of give our opinions on it and just
What we thought.
see how it goes, just as it has been dubbed for a lot of the creators that are coming out. I kind of like the name that's out there right now. It's called the Iron Age of content creation. So it's more of, guerrilla style of people just making stuff and being supported by the audience. So kind of give our opinions on what's coming out.
So to talk about the company a little bit first, was this kickstarted
It was not
or
actually
something similar?
It was not actually a Kickstarter. Everything was already done, so it was more of a pre-order. So basically,
Okay.
he had the entire thing was written and drawn and ready to print. I think some of the printing was done, but they had to print more, I believe. So basically, it's not like your typical Kickstarter where somebody is there interest out there, then I'll hire an artist and do all that. He'd already had that done, so the book was ready to go from a standpoint of we just need to hit the button, get everything done, and print it.
Got it. Are we going spoilers? Are we trying to avoid spoilers?
We can give them, a little bit of a early. We'll keep it a little vague, just kind of our general thoughts.
Got it.
And then we can I'll do a skip ahead when we want to do spoilers.
Yep. Gotcha. So starting talking without spoilers. So I guess just my overall first impression, when I first started reading it, like through the first couple pages, I was kind of, is the best way to describe it. But I think it really picked up. After, when you get past the first quarter of it, I think it really picks up and it hooked me. And I know by the time I got to the end, without giving anything away, I was like, oh, I want to read the next one, which unfortunately isn't out yet. So, I definitely think it hooked me as I went through, because I read it all in one sitting. And yeah, I didn't want to stop reading, that's for sure.
I can basically say I had kind of the similar experience. I didn't know what to expect. I guess looking at the cover and the art, I kind of thought I was going to go in and there was going to be a little more punch right off the bat, because you look at the cover art, everybody's in costume, they're doing the superhero thing. So that's what I thought I was going to get. And it starts off a little bit slower, and so it's actually kind of slowly getting into it, which at first I was kind of a little bummed on, but I was like, no, I once it got to the end, I was the same as you. It's like it's over with, and I want to read more. I want more. Where is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it starts out actually with quite a bit of mystery, and I think it's mystery that doesn't really get solved by the end of this issue. And without going too much into spoilers, that you just have a lot of questions about the world, I would say. That I find the world very interesting. Just in the first few pages, they set up so many questions that I want answered. Trying to stay vague on it, but there's a really good sense of the beginning of world building here that I really hope continues on, because it's got me genuinely interested in this world.
That's what I was thinking of too, and probably I would compare it to. When I was reading it, it felt kind of like the movie Nobody, in that you don't really, you're following this character, but you don't know much about him. And there is some stuff that happens in the beginning. It's like, it's not what I would expect from a superhero comic for the guy that's supposed to be the main superhero.
Yeah, he's very not hero-y, but not in a we see so much of that now. Like I think Deadpool kind of kicked that off in the mainstream when the first movie came out of the anti-hero to the point where it's almost become cringy. This doesn't do that in a cringy way, I don't think. I think this does it in a way where this seems like a real guy. It doesn't seem like a guy who's just trying to be edgy. This seems like what a real person, how they might act and behave.
Yeah, and it's not your typical like deconstructive. There's been so many deconstructing of the superhero. Basically, here is our Superman, but he hates being Superman, or he's just a
Mhm.
major a hole and is tearing people apart because he's got unlimited power. He's exploiting that. It seems like it's just a guy living his life and is brought back into something that he gave up. We'd probably, without going into spoilers, um, we can touch on a few things because we touched on the story and I would say we both recommend it for what it is.
Absolutely. What's the pricing on it?
This I'm not sure what the standard pricing was,
Okay.
so I don't know. The we purchased these
Right.
ourselves, so this isn't like a sponsored thing. But we got the two issues for around $70.
It's about 35 a piece. I would say they're worth that. They're worth 35 a
Yeah,
piece.
yeah, and he just had a message on apparently the shipping for because he's a startup company. The shipping is kind of killing him, so that price might drop if demand is up and
Mhm.
he's able to actually get a better deal through distributors and through the shipping companies. So right now, I haven't actually looked on what the standard price is. So all I can go is what the price is. I'll look it up and probably put it up on screen
Sure.
somewhere. So that can be out there. So if you're watching this in the future and it's out there, the standard price will appear somewhere on the screen.
Do we want to talk about the art?
Um, that's kind of where I was going at. Um, so we touched on the story. Um, I like. Okay, I'll let you go first.
This is one of my favorite kinds of when you read graphic novels and comic books. I think sometimes you get ones where it's you can't tell what's going on. And I know a lot of times that's a product of the age. The one I'm thinking of specifically is Watchmen. Now don't get me wrong, I like Watchmen, but it is hard sometimes to tell what's going on in Watchmen. One, because it feels very almost pixelated and sketchy, and two, the art isn't necessarily and this is going to get me hate. I don't think the art in Watchmen contributes to the story very well. I think it's almost distracting, and I've read Watchmen recently. Whereas this does a really good job of both it's not distracting me from the dialogue, which is where the story is coming from primarily. But also, I'm flipping through pages here. I think it does a good job of telling story through frames. Especially this does what comic books do better than any what comic books and graphic novels do better than any medium, with those frames where there is no dialogue, there is no text. I'm looking specifically at a strip right now where all it is our main character and he's staring down a great big dude and there's no text, but the way they're looking at each other without getting into spoilers, you can tell something's about to happen here. And that's a type of storytelling you don't get really with any other print medium. So in summary, I think this does a really good job of walking the line between the dialogue is carrying the story, the the imagery is not distracting from the story, but is in fact supplementing it, which I think a lot of graphic novels and comic books don't do very well.
I kind of have the same thoughts. The artwork, it's really good artwork, and it's actually kind of the mainstream comics have suffered because of their choices in artists now, and it's not the greatest, and it's everything's out of proportion in the mainstream comics. So I look at this and it's like everybody looks like they should. It's not like it's not stylized. It's more, grounded, and these are real people, and you never have to look at it and try and figure out what is this person doing, what is that, so for the most part I look at the artwork, it's really solid, and I like the crispness of it. I like, the colors are really bright and they pop in the areas where they need to. They also use very effective use of shadow, so everything's kind of in certain areas, and in darker ones there's, a good profiles and stuff like that going on. Probably the only thing that I would, just a slight knock on it, there are a couple spots where it feels like there is probably a frame or a picture missing. There was one spot where somebody gets thrown through a door, and when you're looking at it, it's on one page and it flips to the next, and basically the guy is up against the door, and the next scene that you see, the door is open and the guy's on the floor, and you don't see like that in between. So there's a couple spots where there's the action isn't quite clear on what happened, because I actually had to go back. I'm like, did I miss an image? Did I skip a page or something? Because it's like it felt like there was a slight disconnect. And there was another spot where there is a fight going on, and I couldn't determine actually what happened, because there's one scene where they're launching at each other and there is no impact, and then so basically they're launching at each other, and the next frame they're sliding apart, and I have no idea what happened in between. I don't know if that was, one of them is a full page image, so I don't know if there's an editing issue and that was supposed to be on, those two pages got switched or something. That could be the case. But it was just one spot where I found it really odd, because I was like, I haven't seen, they've basically had the startup poses like 2 times in a row and they haven't connected. And I couldn't figure out why. Maybe I'm just being a little too picky, but it was just something that came across a little
No,
odd.
I agree with that. And you bringing that up actually reminded me of something I wanted to talk about, which was in film, we call them jump cuts, when a scene completely cuts to something entirely
Yep.
different. And this comic book does that at times. So this is different than what you were talking about. I don't think it does the jump cuts well, because it's a book, unfortunately. And I think it just suffers from, I flip the page and suddenly we're in a different place entirely with different characters. And I think every time it happened, at least 3 times when it happened, I flipped back to see if I missed a page. And I think when that is the case, there's a problem there, because if something isn't flowing well when I need to go back. Now, maybe I'm just stupid. That's possible. But it happened 3 different times where we would completely change scenes, and I don't know how you fix that, because I don't necessarily want it fixed with text at the top that says, this is where we are now. And this book does that at times as well. And that is not really the way I want to do it. So maybe this is me being too picky, because I don't have a solution for that problem. I just know that it is something where it did confuse me at times, where I needed to go back and say, what the heck just happened? So I think it's more than just an action thing, because it does happen in the action like you described. It happens in story beats too.
I was just flipping through it now. I know there was one spot, and when we get a little further into it, I wanted to bring it up, because there was one scene. I'm like, I could not figure out what actually happened, so I wanted to go over that. But for the most part, just looking at it as in total, this is the first comic for this company, and everything I'm seeing, there's a little rough edges, but for the most part, it is better quality than any of the stuff I've seen coming out of the main companies that are supposed to be the big ones. These are supposed to be the pinnacle of what you're shooting for, and this blows all of that stuff out of the water. Kind of the nice thing is I don't feel a message that's being forced into the story. Right now, it's just here's the story, here's the characters, and it's bringing you through and kind of carrying you along for the ride.
And that's a good thing that you brought up because as I was reading it, I was actively looking for that too. Because I think that's something that we're conditioned to do now, unfortunately, that media pushes an agenda. Whether it's an agenda we agree with or not, they tend to push it. And when I say they, I mean everyone, whether no matter what your political bias is, there tends to be some sort of agenda in any form of media. So I was looking for that here. And I agree. I couldn't really find one. It seems like it's almost feels weird in a good way because it's abnormal now to see that. And I think that's a really big plus point for this is I also do not detect that here.
Okay, now that we've gotten our pros and cons out of the way, and we've been dancing around the story beat and keeping everybody on their toes with our actual conversation here. Not really saying much because we're trying to keep it spoiler free. So if you are interested in getting the comic, I would definitely get it. I would definitely say it's worth your time and it's worth your money. I do not regret purchasing this, and I am kind of hoping that he announces the second issue is going to be coming out soon. That's how much I actually enjoyed this comic.
I agree.
So for me, it's definitely a recommendation.
Yep, I'm greatly looking forward to the second one. I say totally worth your money, worth your time. Yeah, and it's just cool to support someone who's doing. I know that's kind of frowned upon in a review, but I think it feels good to support something like this. Someone who's trying to make a genuinely good product, and it is that.
And I think this is where I'll just touch on the statement of the company, and the thing that I find actually really great is just the fact that the first thing that is in the ethic is respect the customer. It's someone that's making a company that isn't just assuming we're going to keep purchasing it just because we owe them something. It's like, no, the stance of the company is that we're the customer, so our satisfaction should be the number one goal. So that's kind of refreshing to hear after hearing how many movies and television shows where it's well, you'll always come. I've done how many discussions I've had with people. It's like, what, you're not going to see the new X thing? And it's like, no, they've insulted me so many times. Why would I go pay them money? They hate me.
Yeah, agreed. There's a nice little message right at the beginning of the book, which is it's just a thank you, and it's always cool when you see that in products, and it feels heartfelt. It doesn't feel like a gimmick.
And it's something that's severely lacking in a lot of industries now, is that the customer should not be taken for granted. They should not be assumed that they're always going to buy your product because they've always bought it in the past. So it's kind of nice to see. But with that, we've given our thoughts on the company, our recommendations on the comic. So now we can actually get into a discussion of what we actually read. So I don't know if you want to start us off on what do you think of our main character, Avery?
I like him. I have to say I didn't like him at first. Like I kind of mentioned when we were being vague, I think he's kind of boring at first, but that's because we don't know much. And then when you get to the end of the story, we're following this guy's arc, like you said, he's getting pulled back into this world he's gotten out of. And by nature, just like you see in Nobody, spoilers for Nobody, I guess, you need that boredom at the beginning. I don't even know if boredom's the right way. You need that monotony at the beginning in order to have that revelation that, oh, this is who this person is. And I love this idea that they're dancing around. And what makes me want to know more is that there's these people that they call accepts, which I assume is short for exceptionals, who are the powered people. But it seems like he is not one of those people, or at least he doesn't identify himself as one of those people. So I'm really curious to see what that's all about.
Yeah, it's the thing I had, and actually after I read it, it took me about a day before I his character fully clicked with me, because at first he seems pretty gruff and not wanting to help, and so there it's like you can tell there's some type of estrangement between him and his sister. And the thing that got me though is that as his story, he's not in it to be the hero. He's a guy that has a chip on his shoulder, and it's come to a point where it's almost like the basically the reverse psychology where it's like, I didn't want to help this person. Well, you can't help this person. Fine, I'll help them just because you are in my way, and I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Yeah, he almost says that. I was trying to find the spot. He almost says that word for word, where it's an ego thing now. It's not about the person. Um, Very interesting spin.
It's there's an yeah, there's an interesting. I think it was his monologue after he gets injured in his first battle, and he's leaving his sister's car, and he's going to recover his things. And, he's thinking in his head, it's like I'm not even in it for the girl anymore. That guy, he disrespected me, and that can't stand. I was like, ooh, this is not typically what you see in a hero
No,
comic.
not even in an anti-hero comic. You typically don't see that.
Yeah, the anti-hero is he's typically reluctant, and there's another happy-go-lucky character that's bringing them along, or the stoic good guy character that's got to drag him into the actual fight. This guy, he's been disrespected by somebody, and that is what's driving him at the moment.
Okay, so early on in the story, like almost right away, he encounters this character that is labeled as Yara,
I believe it's Yayara.
Yara, Yaira, something like that.
Yes.
Um, what is that about? Is this an attempt to tie in a larger universe?
I am not sure. I think because she is actually one of the variant covers, and she's actually in like a either a superhero or super villain garb on the front cover, and she was heavily involved in the marketing. So I think she's going to be a bigger character. Um, and it doesn't seem like they know each other at
No.
all. But it seemed, I think, when the police commissioner, or if he's the captain, the commissioner, I'm not sure exactly if it says who exactly he is. He seems to be the higher up. But he's brought a phone, and someone holds it up and says she's back. So I'm wondering if it's Yaira, but I'm not positive, because that was a really short breakaway,
Right.
in the middle of it is Yaira versus Alpha Core, and Alpha Core seems to be kind of, for lack of a better term, they seem to be the Justice League or the Avengers of this universe, basically the superhero team of repute that's out there, helping the police and saving that.
I got the idea that Alpha Core was almost the super police. To me, they were more a part of the police than the Justice League is.
It does seem like that. It seems like, because they do reference that the mayor is claiming that all the crime is down, and it seems like they're really so it does, yeah, it feels like that, especially with their garb being all kind of militaristic and stuff like that. They're in the kind of green that kind of evokes some type of military force. So I'm kind of curious, because I don't know if Yaira is actually a supervillain, if because we don't get a really idea. There's the misunderstanding between them, and they have a short throwdown, and Avery ends up in the hospital. And that was something I kind of liked, is that he's stepping back into this. Who knows how long it's been since he's been out of the game.
Right.
So he's not, he doesn't just come in and wipe the floor with everybody else. Our main character is a little rusty in this, which I'm kind of happy with. He's not just coming in wiping the floor with everybody. He's invincible. It's kind of nice to know that our main character can be injured, and there is threats to his life that he has to overcome.
Right, and that's almost that's his first fight. He loses. Right? That's the first one.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he ends up losing to what's his name?
Merc, is it? No, that's the name of the place.
That's the name of the place. Darren?
No, that's the
What's his
main
name?
bad guy's Darren, I thought.
Yeah, Darren's place. So he loses to Darren's main thug. I don't know if the guy the he has a name
Yeah,
because
he
he's
he's named
mentioned
later by
by the
someone else.
police. Yeah, the police after he finally gets taken down.
Also, just as I'm flipping through here,
Uh,
the police are wearing the exact same color as Alpha Core.
that's yeah. I noticed that in the beginning because at first I didn't know there was the first Alpha Core guy. That was another spot where I'll say I didn't quite know what was going on. Is Yaira gets punched by somebody, and I didn't realize at first that that was one of Alpha Core.
Yeah, and actually, I'm looking at these two frames in the book, and you see her, she gets punched and she's like doing a backflip. And then right below that, we see
Yep.
her engaging with the female Alpha Core member. Uh,
Well, she kicks the one guy
yep,
away. So she gets punched. She does a flip, kicks him away, and then she's going to attack him. And then you see her grabbed with like an energy tendril from the female.
yeah. As I looked over
It's like,
that, I thought that was the same person, and they had just gotten their helmet knocked off.
yes. At first, I had to catch the tendril, and then I was like, I saw the change
Yep.
there. So that's kind of one of the areas where I'm speaking of. Is there's, it probably I would say those if those frames were a little bit bigger, so we actually got to see more of that guy and more of them in the same frame to get a better idea of where everybody is. Um, it feels kind of like a movie where there's too many cuts because the main actor can't actually do all the action, so they have to cut around the best pieces, that footage they have to make the action spell out. But you lose a little bit of where everybody is in the
And
scene. So that's kind of one area where
honestly, that's an excellent comparison to make to all of the action in here. I think all of the action feels that way, like it's quick cuts.
probably the one that I wouldn't say is Avery's fight against the guys in against the just the flunkies, because there they actually show them he's actually having some impacts, and they do a couple of, here's the shot and here's the effect of it. Like the first one, the guy that he takes out, where he basically breaks all the guys ribs, and they cycle into that. It's like, holy crap. But yeah, there's a lot of uh you know some of them are just cuts between the action. That's where I was kind of saying it's like it'd be good to see, here's a punch and here's some of the aftermath of that punch, instead of just the punch and the aftermath in the same frame. I understand there's probably, you know, I'm, speaking like I know how to build a comic. I'm just looking at it from a layman, saying that, as I'm trying to follow this, there's a couple spots where I was having a little bit of difficulty, following the action. But for the most part, it flowed decently enough.
Another question I had while we're talking about action, there's a couple spots, and the one that I'm looking at right now is that fight with Yaira, where it shows it's a big frame, and it shows her, like multiple times as if she's moving in one frame. Is that supposed to denote super speed, you think? Because that's what it seems to be
I
telling me.
believe so. Yes, I believe so. I believe it's showing that she's really fast. Mm-hmm. I don't know, that would another area that's, it leaves me questioning. I'm just like, I don't really know the powers of anybody that we're dealing with.
Even our main character, we really don't know. Strength, we know that.
Yeah, he seems to have strength. It seems like, especially in one of the fights, it seems like it might be there's some type of acceleration because he pushes off a wall and launches himself and seems to gain quite a bit more strength than he had before. So I don't know if that's signifying that he needs to have, some type of acceleration to increase his mass or something along those lines. But it seems like it's not just super strength, because he's not, especially when he's fighting against the big goon. He's trading blows, he's doing some damage, but it's not until he has that one push off that he just levels the guy and the guy's done. Because he pushes him through a wall, and then the guy's taken out.
Man, I hope what you described is the case, because that is a very unique take on the quote unquote super strength that I would love to see. I'm honestly kind of bored of the basic superpowers.
Yeah, it's not just I'm super strong, I'm invulnerable, all that jazz. It seems like there's something more going on than he's just really powerful, because he's wiping through the flunkies no problem, but the big guy shows up and he has a little bit of a struggle, and it seems like some of it is he's out of his game, and it seems like his powers aren't just straight up he's super strong.
What do you
that was at least the impression that I got.
Yeah, I would agree. What do you think of the villain, Darren?
I am intrigued. It seems like he is kind of more than just a standard thug, especially if he's got, I'm assuming accepts aren't, they seem to be not incredibly unique, but it doesn't seem like they're extremely common occurrences. So if he's got one on his payroll, that kind of says that he's kind of a big deal in the city.
He feels a little cartoony to me, and I know we haven't seen a lot of him yet, but he has this speech near the end about his empire, and it felt like I was playing an Assassin's Creed game. This big bad guy is monologuing about how empires are always growing, but when they die, or something like that. And I don't know. It felt like he was about to twirl his mustache.
That might be the case. There's a few things that I will give him a little bit, because he does mention that he has like some big event that's going on, because he calls Avery out on messing up his club. So there's something that's happening on that particular night. And then there is I believe there's the two other accepts that are at the club. There's one of them that seems to be maybe some type of telepath, looking at people, and then somebody that has some type of energy thing, and they seem to be some kind of shadowy figure. So, I will kind of give him a little leeway, because, Avery is looking at him as he was this punk that he grew up with. And I have a feeling that he's a bigger player in the city. So I feel like he's kind of kingpin after he's set up. That's, I think, the area we're going for, is that he actually has quite a bit of control. Avery just is looking at him as this punk that he grew up with that's disrespecting him. So I understand that he does seem to be, a little bit, but he probably lives in a world where, kind of fake it till you make it. So if you're supposed to be the big bad guy, you kind of act it up and go with it.
And to be fair, we saw not very much of him. So you need to make your villain a villain when you first see him. To be fair, I'm cutting a little slack there. I don't know. The next thing I wanted to talk about is some of the dialogue in general does not feel like things actual people would say at points. And I was trying to find the exact moment when I started feeling that way. There's some lines that are just, they're written. Do you have any thoughts on that while I try to?
I think I know exactly which one you're talking about. Where Avery's getting ready for the second fight with the big guy, and he's like, "Do not credit heroism when all of this takes place. Blame yourselves, but credit me." Yeah, that one was a little odd. There's a couple idioms that I'm not familiar with. So I don't know if that's just a difference in background that's coming through. There was another one where I'm just like, I think some of it might be
I got
that I'm just not familiar with.
I found a
Go
spot.
ahead.
So this is when he finds Jasmine on the road, and he's talking to her, and I'm thinking to myself, who talks like this? So he tells her, your mother's worried about you, yada yada yada, and then he says this line: "I'm not here to judge you. Just tell me if it's involuntary." Who uses involuntary in casual talk? And that immediately jumped out at me. Just tell me if it's involuntary. Why wouldn't in his type of character, that does not feel like a word that he would say. He's this gruff dude who's now using the word involuntary in casual conversation. It just felt wrong. I know this is nitpicking, but then I go down here where the thug comes up to him and he says, "You cannot be harassing our ladies. You need to move." Cannot? No, but I've never heard somebody say cannot. You say can't. Now, to be clear, these are very, very minor nitpicks. If this is the biggest problem I have with this book, it's a great book.
Yeah, there's a couple lines that that are like that. The one when he's facing off and kind of like it. I don't know if maybe we're going with maybe the main guy is he's not supposed to be the cool guy with the quip. It just seems like he's somebody there that's in for a fight, and he won't back down. That's the kind of thing that I get him, get the impression of the main character. Yeah, there's a little bit of the dialogue, but for the most part, I'm solid with it. There's other than those little odd exchanges, which to be fair, everybody has odd exchanges.
Sure.
So if that's what it's supposed to be, is that not every scene will be epic and everybody knows exactly what to say and they never flub a line and they never
Yeah, I had to mention it because it was enough to take me out of it, where I stopped and I said, "What?"
Yeah, the involuntary, it.
I'm sorry to anyone out there who says that.
Is somebody forcing you? Yeah.
I'm just intolerant of that word.
Yeah, I that's what I was trying to get. I'm not exactly sure exactly what it feels like. We're in America, but I'm not exactly sure. What area of America we're fitting into.
To me, it seems southern.
So I didn't get an impression.
It seems southern to me because at the end when we meet that the costume designer, the Edna Mode,
Yep.
it seems, of this universe.
Yeah, unfortunately, every costume designer is always going to be compared to Edna
And
Mode,
his costume doesn't seem to have a cape, so it's consistent. But
no
he
case.
says something about how he used to design costumes for the Southern Wrestling League. Never mind. Take what back I said. Southern Style Wrestling League.
Yes.
All right. I walk back everything I just said.
I'm keeping that all in. Everybody will know. Everyone will know.
It's funny. Probably do
that
keep
you
it
assumed. I kind of got the impression that it's somewhere in the South, but I didn't get, I didn't get a feeling of, accents or something,
Right.
To place it. And maybe that's an artistic choice, because I know sometimes when you do that, it gets really hard to read whatever the characters are saying if everybody has some type of accent in the book and you're like, I don't know what you're trying to say. So that might be just, a artistic choice to, make it be able to be understood by a wider audience without going fully into giving everybody some unique accent, like the old X-Men used to do, where everybody had to have their accent appear in the dialogue, and it's like, this is getting really hard to read because you got a Russian guy, you got a African woman, you got somebody from the deep south, you got somebody from New Orleans. It's like everybody's got their accent, and it's really hard.
Yeah. Maybe a good way to wrap this up then is what's going on in the back of the book with the somewhere near Florida.
Those, I would guess that those are planned other comics.
That's the idea I got as
So
well.
it seems like those are the other areas where this universe is going to expand, which is, interesting on where it's going. It will be very intriguing to see how fast this expands and kind of the release schedule. Yeah, so looking at it, I would say right now it's a very good start. There's a little bit of rocky stuff, but for the most part, there's enough hooks, there's enough questions that I want to know what the answers are. Enough questions for the world building. I'm like, where is this going? I want to know what's going on. So the only thing that I could see kind of causing a hiccup is if more stuff in the pipeline isn't ready to go. I would assume, just from this wanting to be a continuous comic book company, that, and he's been the owner has been reading comics all of his life. So I'm fully aware that would be cognizant of the fact that if you're not coming out with more right away, then that could stop all the momentum that's happening. So it's just a slight worry on, but I don't know if it's justified.
I think it is justified. Like you said, this is a great start, but I can't promise you that I won't forget about this in a year. You know that if we don't get something else, that this falls off my radar, and I do have that chomping at the bit right now to read more. Will I have that in a week? I don't know. So, but what I will say, it seems planned out. This seems like there is a world just waiting to be dove into. I think that the world building in here is good evidence of that, and this idea of setting up more characters gives me hope. So I think it's definitely a legitimate fear to have, but I'm optimistic about it.
That's what I mean. I mean, I'm worried about it, but I'm saying he's trying to make a company that lasts. So I'm fully convinced that he's aware that, because plenty of other great comics and great comic book companies have died because either their quality went down or they didn't have the consistency. So I have a feeling that there's already stuff in the pipeline, and I'll be following it closely to see. Hopefully there's more coming. Looking at it, I'm optimistic that this will continue forward. I mean, this is a graphic novel, so it's probably, for the most part, looking at it, it's probably about 5 to 6 issues of what you would see in a standard comic. But I'm hoping it's not, 6 to 8 months before we hear more. Because like you said, that will definitely simmer basically the demand that's out there right now. It's like, it's a great start. Hopefully there's more right on the horizon. Well, I think seems like we've wrapped up what we need to say about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me for this review.
It was fun.
So it's fun. It's fun actually discussing something.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have a whole bunch of caveats. It's like, well, you have to look past this stuff and this stuff and this stuff and just kind of turn your brain off and not think about things. I mean, I actually thought about it. I didn't have a grasp on how I wanted it, how I thought about it at first. And it was about a day later that I was like, you know what? I wanted to keep reading right away, but then I kind of frowned upon that after I was done. I was like, I wanted more right off the bat. So that's kind of a good thing in the long run. So as I was looking back on it, it's like, if I wanted more, there was enough to like that I really want to see what's going on. And I wanted to keep going with the story. So when you're disappointed that you're done with the story and you want more, it's kind of a good thing for a
Absolutely.
comic. Bas- Basically for any type of media.
Absolutely.
Well, this was quite a bit of fun. Wrap this up. Thanks for joining me for this. We'll maybe do it again if there's other stuff that comes out. I know there are other content creators that are doing some great things out there. Maybe we can figure out something when another one comes out and kind of
Yeah,
touch
for
base on
sure.
that.
Could do some bad stuff in the meantime, too.